Ducked off low key, yeah, you know me. Hey. Kickin' with Tyree, hit it 3 like Kyrie.
I'm Sidney Fussell. I'm one of the directors of #WhileBlack. It's a documentary feature premiering at South by Southwest. My background isn't in film, it's in journalism actually. So I spent about 10 years as a technology journalist for places like The Atlantic and Wired Magazine, looking at the ways that AI and different technologies impacted marginalized groups. And so my first sort of foray into filmmaking was trying to understand the quantification of the George Floyd video. WhileBlack follows Darnella Frazier. She's the young woman who filmed the George Floyd video. And so we all saw that video from home. It was released in the wake of the COVID-19 epidemic. And so for me, my work was about not just what was captured in the video, the police brutality and the racism, but I was also interested in the way it was being shared. It was being spread on different platforms. It was driving all these comments and likes. It was being quantified. It was running against ads, and it was looping over and over again. So I was interested in both the psychological impact of that on the viewers, as well as what that meant for the corporate bottom line of these different platforms that were looping it over and over. The first time I saw the video, it was right next to a SpongeBob SquarePants meme. And I'd also seen it again looped on Twitter as a meme in its own. And so much of the film is about both Darnella's journey in the aftermath as a witness, and also about looking very closely at the way that Black trauma gets commodified, turned into money and a meme.
Yeah, that's extremely interesting, especially when you talk about like how it affects the bottom line as well. And when you first approached the project, what felt the most urgent for you? Was it the footage itself or more of the aftermath?
I'd say that because I'm a journalist, I was drawn into the research, and there's a lot of research and a lot of journalism that went into understanding the different platforms, the technology. But then after, I think about a year, the project started in 2021. So after about a year, when we started to meet with witnesses and really understand the gravity, what had happened to them and how similar it all felt. You know, Darnella recorded her video in 2020. Another one of our protagonists is Diamond Reynolds. She recorded her video in 2016. We also meet with Laura King, the daughter of Rodney King. That video was shot in 1992. And despite, you know, the gap in years, it felt like there were these overlaps in terms of mental health, in terms of the legacy of the videos, in terms of how they kind of it makes the internet not a very safe place. If at any moment one of the videos can pop up. I mean, you know, most of the film takes place in Minneapolis. There's 2 new videos of people being shot that are spreading across the internet. So one thing I took away was, if I'm creating a feature, which, you know, is a video, what are the ways that I can try to engage with witnesses, considering that they're tired of having it looped over and over again? I mean, Darnella had to testify in all these different trials and watch it over and over again and explain it over again. This, like, the cyclical nature of having to watch it all over again and seeing it pop up randomly, and now being infamous so that when people Google you or just meet you, the video shows up right next to your name. Understanding that they had been forced into a kind of stasis, it really changed how I felt about the research I'd done. And it really changed how we wanted to approach them, and then also depict them in the film, because we didn't want to be part of what was keeping them, you know, in that one moment forever. We wanted to show what they did after and what their lives are like now and what they want their futures to be. And so having that part as a container made everything else make sense. You know, it wasn't just about like, oh, here's all this different information, here's all these numbers and, you know, AI and it wasn't really about that. It was like, I want to do what's best for people who are in this specific type of stasis. How can I show people what they're going through in a way that doesn't just feel like I'm repeating the trauma?
Just going off that, like you said, you were talking to people who had life-altering moments that they hit record in, you know, and they didn't know the ramifications of what happened. What did you learn about like the long-term like toll of being a witness to something so tragic and traumatizing?
It is tragic. It is traumatizing. I would say one thing that I learned was that there's a long Black history of trying to support and trying to uplift witnesses. It's not perfect and it's difficult because it shouldn't have to happen. It shouldn't be a role that anyone has forced upon them. None of these people were activists or chose to be activists. They're just responding to situations that were forced upon them. But I would say it was really heartening learning about, different awards that Darnella had gotten, or people who had reached out to her, or the different support networks that existed. Although they certainly aren't enough and they shouldn't have to exist in the first place, it was good to know that there's a part of the Black experience in America where we have that natural reflex of like, honoring storytellers, honoring witnesses, trying to be empathetic to people who are in these situations, understanding how widespread issues of police brutality and gun violence and gang violence, all these things are connected. I was very heartened to learn how much of that felt natural or it already existed. Those types of support networks, those understandings of the ways that we could help each other. So it was good to stumble upon it. Although I'll say again, it shouldn't have to exist, and it's unfortunate that it does. And that's a point that comes up with another woman we follow, Kenda. She is a art curator, and she preserved a lot of the protest art and murals and things that were created in the immediate aftermath of George Floyd's murder. And so she was talking about, everyone remembers the beautiful mural art that was made in George Floyd's honor and these other police brutalities, but it shouldn't exist. Like, it's beautiful, but it shouldn't be here. It's memorializing something that shouldn't have to happen in the first place. And so finding that balance as a filmmaker between honoring something while also noting that let's keep our eye on the ball about what it is that we're here to do, which is to stop this, not just honor the fallen. That was a balance that gets discussed in the film, and also something I felt.
Yeah, just off of that, the George Floyd video was viewed so many times. How do you feel like, what does that do to a society psychologically, especially when we're seeing something so traumatizing over and over and over again, almost like it's being like pushed to us to see it, and it shouldn't have never happened, like you said. Like, what does that do to us? Does it desensitize us?
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel like that happens?
Yeah, I mean, we looked into the research, and research saw a lot of desensitization, a lot of numbness as a response. So you have the trauma of it happening, then you have the trauma of seeing it online and having it pop up anywhere, and it loops everywhere on the news and on social media. People are posting it as some type of display of solidarity, and it really creates a numbness. But what we learn is that numbness is a response to a pain. And so at one point we talked to a young group of people about, how did you feel about the video? They would have been 13 or 14 when it first came out. And they were just very like, oh, that happens all the time. We already knew that. And there is a numbness that I think is hitting people younger and younger, with these being teenagers. But there's also an opportunity for resilience and building a kind of literacy around these moments of, well, what is the best way to respond? Do I need to post it? How do I change my settings? How to avoid looping it? If I'm a creator myself, maybe I create something where I say, hey guys, here's like the best thing to do. Can I tap into my network? And then whether it's, the blackout squares or a hashtag or just a video of like, here's what to do when one of these videos spreads, whatever it is. Maybe it's none of it, and you post a bunch of cat videos because you want your page to be a space that's kind of like a oasis or like a break from that content. Maybe you write a letter or you send an email to the platforms and you're like, hey, this should be off by default. Some settings are, some aren't. So I think what I saw was both numbness, resilience, and action, kind of all of it together. People responded in a lot of different ways, and from that I think we're learning how to metabolize these types of images socially. Well, the people who want to learn how are learning how, and hopefully part of this film is part of making it more the norm to digest and understand these images in a certain way.
So you said that you investigated how corporations monetize these viral Black trauma moments. What internal conversation did you have about how you're going to frame that critique? And did you find anything that surprised you?
Yeah, so we knew we wanted it to be graphical, and we knew we wanted it to be visual. Like, my background's in journalism, so I was interested in data visualization. So, in a really amazing partnership between our art director and animator, her name's Aaron, and then Ross, who's a data researcher, we were able to use an algorithm to scrape the ads that appeared on Facebook in the 8 months after the George Floyd video to see which ads use clips from either the video itself, protest footage, police brutality. And what we were able to find is that in the immediate aftermath of one of these videos, that becomes a kind of like a type of marketing almost. So you see, for example, there's a company that sells gun holsters. There's another company that sells security equipment, arms training, scaffolding. These businesses that sell products that are in any way connected would use the videos and use the clips in order to say, well, this is why you need to go out and get a gun holster or go out and get firearm training. So the ads would be something like a witness video, then the person coming out and being like, well, this crazy mob, of rioters is why you need to buy our product. And so the way that these videos are recorded in order to document police brutality, then get looped into this system where they become advertising and promotional marketing on platforms that get a cut of everything that goes out there. I was very interested in that system of, the intentions of the witness, of the person documenting it, being completely obliterated as it goes through this system, and ends up putting money in the pockets of people who are not at all interested in, social equity or something like that. It's completely different. And I think what was most surprising was that it's not a left or right issue. We saw there were lots of left-leaning campaign pages that did the exact same thing. And so if you take a witness video and you put it in afterwards, you say, and this is why we need police reform, or after it you say, and this is why you need to go and get a gun, it's functionally the same to the platforms because they're making money either way. So I think by showing all that, using the graphics and the visualization, we're able to say that as long as we're having these conversations in the square of social media, there's always going to be those economic incentives.
Do you feel like these platforms have to have a responsibility to the people who are on it, who drives the engagement, especially when it's like a traumatic thing like this, or what just happened in Minnesota recently?
Yeah, I think platforms could do a lot more. There's this thing called awareness, and it's like, oh, we needed to spread awareness, and it's like, that's not quite, it's used just as kind of like panacea catch-all for everything. And it's like, maybe we could be a little bit more specific or targeted with what's raising awareness versus what's making money, what's like exposing an issue, or what's like exploiting that issue for clicks or for attention or something like that. I know that platforms are typically very against restricting anything that they don't have like a legal necessity to. Like, if they're not legally required to take it off the platform, most of it, flies. And that is, I don't know that we tell people this is what you need to do, but we do say that perspective of, well, who cares who it really hurts? It makes money, keep it on there. That is a perspective that is subjective. And the technology is being made by people who believe in that. And at any point, we can come in together and say, we don't want to orient technology this way. It doesn't have to be like this. Let's find something else. Let's go to a different platform. Let's come up with different rules. Let's change the policy. And so I want people to understand how movable and mutable this orientation is. But first, you have to see it in order to critique it. And so hopefully this film's able to say, like, oh, we kind of just accept this orientation towards violent material. We could always say collectively, we want to change. And because these platforms ultimately have shareholders they're responsible to, have user, subscription goals that they want to hit, they don't want to boycott. they do follow suit, but we have to be aware of it, to critique it, to then act collectively. All of technology is mutable. All of it is within our grasp and our ability to change in any way that we choose. We just have to choose it and act together.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of platforms say that it's gearing too far forward or towards censorship. You know, they censor a lot of other things, you know, that are not as bad, you know, nowhere near.
Yeah, they do. I mean, you know, everybody talks about, you know, the shadow banning of certain hot button words on TikTok or Twitter or X or Facebook, Meta, whatever. Like, everyone knows that what your you know, reach, your ability to engage with content, or excuse me, your ability to have your own content engaged by people outside of your immediate network is algorithmically determined. Algorithms aren't fairies that just magically appear, and you know, they're created because they have certain goals and they have certain things they're optimizing for. And if the powers that be say we want to move people away from this content, insert this kind of thing, make them interested in that, all that is completely subjective. And so this idea of censorship, and it's like bad. I mean, things are already being censored. Everything is being curated for you. Like, we don't super get into it in the film, but one thing that's happened over the past few years is that whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, your feed is less and less a list of things that you've chosen to see. And it's more and more, you know, like the FYP page is more and more algorithmically curated with things that they want you to engage with. And so when you go onto any social media site now, usually the first thing you see is some type of landing page where it's like, here's what we think you want to see. Mm-hmm. Is that not a form of censorship? Is that not a form of you putting your thumb on the scale and drawing my attention towards what it is that you want? Like, is that not a enforcement of certain subjectivities? And usually doesn't matter because it's, you know, lighthearted content, but it bothers me that the conversation around censorship is entirely based on like, oh, you're saying we shouldn't see you. It's like activists are saying that you shouldn't put certain things on the platform, and it's like, well, everything you do on the platform is completely you're being led by the hand every step of the way. I mean, if you want to actually see only the things that you chose to follow, there's a lot of steps in that. There's a lot of friction in that. But if you just want to see what they've determined they think you should see based on their own interests and like what they want you to see, and also what they're trying to promote at a given time, that doesn't get critiqued as a form of censorship. But in either case, you are being led a certain way. And I think ultimately what we want is a real sense of agency. If we're going to make these platforms be the new town square where we talk about racial issues, sexual issues, politics, money, all these things get discussed, and you know, we watch the culture process in real time, everything on these platforms. We need to be in control, and we need to have that agency and not only see the things they want us to see, where we're trapped in these kind of echo chambers. So that's kind of a long answer, but it's like, I think that fundamentally, if we're trying to empower people to like make their own choices, then let's do that. And I don't think, hey, this isn't good, don't loop it over and over again, is getting us away from that.
Mm-hmm. And they do so many things to try to censor people on the platform, whether it's like declining your ads if you're moving too fast. Like, I've seen it where, let's say you grow too fast, they will start making sure that you can't reach outside a certain audience. They'll decline your ads. They'll say your ads are running, but when you look at the ads, you've got none from it as a business. And I've even, there was one time where I like went to support for Meta about like one of the ads not running. And they were like, well, you have a balance. And I was like, well, it says my balance is due on the 12th of March or something like that. They're like, well, you have this. I was like, no, I don't. Like, they're just trying to like make it a reason why this is happening. Not that they're trying to mute your growth. It's, you owe this or you owe that. It's
absolutely. I mean, you have to be able to see the it's sort of like a man behind the curtain or puppet strings, or whatever, but you have to be able to see the intentions. You know what I mean? It looks like it's all just happening magically and it's all just laid out for you, but you have to be able to see the intentions, which is like click more, buy more. You can't have that, so you pay us first. Like all those things are built into the system. And so exposing that is going to be more and more important as we use these platforms to think through, these big political issues. What is the culture of the moment? I would say from 2020 to now, the culture has shifted like 10 times. And one of the clearest way to document that is like the way social media uses has changed and what memes are rising to the top and who's on top and all that stuff. All that stuff is being determined by them. So, you have to like make sure people are fully in control of that.
And I feel like, I don't want to say it's desensitized us, but it kind of has in a way, because even the reaction to the ICE shooting a couple weeks ago that was on film, I don't feel like we had the strongest reaction, like on a global scale, of what it would have been 5 years ago, you know, because we've been people are just used to seeing things like that, now. So because it's been promoted and it keeps happening, it happens. Feels like every other month at times, something like this happens.
There's a fatalism and a fatigue. I mean, you talk about just the past 10 years, 2016, 2020, and 2026. I don't think anyone signed up for a new social revolution every 5 years. I don't think anyone signed up for this cycle of like some type of state-sanctioned murder goes viral, and then we have to go, muster these responses. And I don't think anyone signed up for every 4 or 5 years that happening. And there is a fatigue that's setting in. And there also is a concerted effort to hasten and exacerbate that fatigue. The people who don't want change are the first ones to say, oh, here we go again, I'm exhausted. Da, da, da. And maybe they genuinely are, or maybe they're trying to make sure that the responses are more muted this time, But at the same time, you can't live in a constant state of hysteria and shock every time something goes wrong, because then you go crazy. Like that will be tiring that way. So it's a huge balance. But I completely agree that this moment felt both exactly the same and very different from a few years ago, and then from a few years before that.
Yeah. Why do you feel that South by Southwest is a good platform to premiere this story?
I think South by Southwest is a perfect platform to premiere this story because it is so intersectional, interdisciplinary. There's technology. Excuse me. I'm gonna start over. Okay. I think South by Southwest is the perfect place to debut the film because it's such a fascinating intersection of multidisciplinary artists. There's education, there's technology, there's music, there's art and animation, there's history. So I'm really excited, and I think it's best suited in a place where there's so many different things happening all at once, and there's such a emphasis on moving past those types of boundaries. People don't need to think of it as just this or just that or separate them. We experience them all at once. And so the film itself is supposed to be a combination of all these different things. And I think because South by encompasses so much and has like audiences that are really hungry for a more expansive, multifaceted experience, I think that it's the perfect venue for it, the perfect audience for it. And I'm very, very excited.
I'm excited. My last question for you is going to be, if witnessing is unavoidable in the digital age, what does responsible witnessing look like today?
I mean, responsible witnessing, I think what we saw with the ICE shooting is that you can be a responsible witness, but if you are up against an irresponsible actor, it becomes invalid in that way because you can still be subjected to violence. And so, we just had a call with some people on the ground in Minneapolis, and they were saying, witness with your phone if you feel safe, if you're able to stay the 8 feet away, if you're complying with officers' orders, if you're making sure that you're not too close, like all these different things. If you don't feel safe and that's not the path you want to take, there's other ways to be active, to be informed, to provide resources and support. And maybe that's the responsible way to do it, you know? So I would say that more than anything, the number one thing is to always prioritize safety and solidarity. Maybe witnessing the way Darnell or Diamond did is the way to do it. But if it isn't, there's other things you can do. There's other ways to support. There's all types of things you can do to help, you know, your community and foster it. And maybe that's what it is. So I think the essence of responsible witnessing is like, what is the choice that's safest for me and my peoples and my family and my community? And then making that one, and don't feel obligated to do anything in a situation you don't feel safe, and don't feel shamed if you ultimately decide not to. You know, find other ways to give back, ask for help, even if it's just listing up people and it's like, what did you see that was so traumatic? Do you want to stay on my couch? Like, whatever. There's a way to be a responsible that isn't just tied to you know, pulling out the phone and all that stuff. That's great, and it can be role changing, but it should never come at the expense of a life as it did recently.
Well, that's all I have for you today, man. I want to thank you for sitting with me and
Thanks. I hope it went well. I can't tell.
It went well, man. It was amazing. Got a lot of information out of that.
Ducked off low key, yeah, you know me. Kickin' with Tyree, hit it 3 like Kyrie.